real quick, I know a lot of you know me from outside of the building, prior experience, Sean being one of the biggest ones. But how many people in here actually know who I am and what I do? I'm a radio person. Okay. So we'll start off with a little brief history. I started radio when I was 17. I am now 37. That means I have been doing this for 20 years. Over the course of that time, I have done an imaging company which did production elements from New Zealand to Ireland. And I ran an agency called United Voice Talent Agency where we did what was known as imaging production. Imaging production is one of those things that we'll touch on in a later class, because today I wanted to talk to you about the one square foundation that you have in radio. How many people here are currently doing videos where you use your own voice on them? How many people like what you hear?
It's okay, you sound good.
Okay, yeah. Me and Linda were talking about it, about the, what if you're a person that can't stand the sound of your own voice? 3 words of advice, get over it. Because voice is, as far as you being a person or a personality, voice, inflection, the way you enunciate words, your pacing and your timing is the audio side of painting the picture that you're trying to create on television. And a lot of people spend a lot of time going really, really hard technical into the video side without taking care of the most important tool you have, which is yourself. Now, one thing that radio is different than television is there is no, at least in this market, New York, LA, markets like that, there is no controller. You are at the same time being an operator that you are being the talent and personality. So the operation side of it, how to use the controls and stuff, we'll cover later. Those are very simple. The first thing that you need to know before you go into a studio is how to use your voice. Now, how many of you in here have to do any public presentations like this? Chivo. Wow, Chivo, man, me and you are the go-to guys, huh?
There was a time when Jay said the only person allowed to do a voiceover was Chivo.
Mm-hmm. But real quick, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, why do you think that is?
Because he has experience doing it. He was
You
a
can
radio
read
person.
it.
Yeah.
He can read.
No,
Ah.
he was a radio person.
Yeah. Well, back when television was in its birth, when it was in its inception, and when people started to make the jump from radio to television, the only people that you could find to tackle the new media was radio people. It's because they're used to the whole presentation and thing. And in the old days, you had a live in-house studio audience for shows like the Amos and Andy Show, Jack Benny program, things like that. They were done almost like a sitcom where you had the audience sitting there listening to the presenters. And as a kind of a side effect of that environment of broadcasting, these guys learned how to use their voice as well as their bodies to help with their time and their pace. And those two things, timing and pace, are going to be the absolute foundation of what you need to learn. So, if I gave everybody a little bit of a script right now and had you repeat it back, how many people right now would feel confident that you could do that?
I could do it, but it's not going to be fantastic.
All right. Do you know the difference between being passable and fantastic is just a couple of steps? All right. So, some science behind this, because there is science and there's a lot of math involved in radio stations, but the science behind this is you always talk more comfortably with your friends and with your peers. You also structure the way you speak to your audience. Even if you don't realize it, in the back of your brain, it's called code switching. You pick up on somebody's dialect, their speed, their phrasing, and your brain structures your speech to deliver it back out to them. Radio does have a standardized format as far as speech, and it's called Midwestern Neutral. Okay, American Midwestern Neutral. About 95% of everybody that's in radio speaks in a Midwestern Neutral. I have a Southern dialect, So that means that I had to retrain my voice to be able to accept the Midwestern standard of talking. Now, does anybody, I'm going to run through some words real quick. Does anybody know what inflection is? Okay. What is it?
It's the tone that you say each individual word and syllable.
Okay. Give us an example.
How you put emphasis on different words in a sentence to emphasize the different parts of the sentence that you want to stand out.
Yeah. And don't take it down to words, because you can always put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Try saying that 3 times fast. But he's right. When it comes to presenting on a radio station, presenting your songs and stuff, or presenting your show if you're into a talk format, you need to understand pacing and inflection. Inflection can say that a sentence either sounds like a question or a sentence sounds like a question. See? Just by changing the way that you, I guess, modulate your tones, the way that you go up in volume and pitch or down in volume and pitch, can actually paint as big of a picture as a video image can. One of the biggest examples that I like using is a guy that is everywhere, Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe started off on a QVC station as one of the guys that was in overnights trying to sell, what were those, Precious Moments, porcelain figurines, and oh God, man, every grandmother's house had those evil little cherub faces in it. But he went from that to being able to do programs like Deadliest Catch and Dirty Jobs. And the biggest thing about him, and the reason that he is so successful, is he's learned how to make words matter. And when you're on the radio, you don't have vision. So people can't see you, which is good because it gets silly at times. But it's also bad, because if I can't read the tone of your face and your body language, and I'm only stuck to the audio realm, whatever guesses I have about your character, or whatever feelings I have about what you're presenting, are only going to have any feedback with the way that you're delivering. Does that make sense? It's kind of a jagged way of putting it, but I'm not going to be able to trust your body language. I have to trust your voice. And that's where it gets down into the, okay, we can actually make this work. All right. So first thing I want to do is talk about, is anybody nervous in front of one of these? Sable. Why?
I don't like the sound of my voice.
You don't like the sound of your voice. What don't you like about it?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not Chivas.
It's not Chivas.
It's not Chivo's voice? Well, we're kind of glad you don't have Chivo's voice.
That would be a
That
little
would be
creepy,
weird.
actually. Matter of fact, we should do that for a video
I
project.
know.
Let's just have Sable say a bunch of stuff, have him do it back, and then.
Right.
Actually, Kamaya and I do that all the time. I voice it word of mouth.
Well, the first thing is when you're in a studio, you don't see this. I know that's going to sound a little weird because you spend a lot of time in front of this, but you don't see this. How many people here feel uncomfortable talking in front of strangers? How many people feel comfortable talking around your best friend? All right. The brain is an amazing tool because it can tell you that a room full of strangers is your best friends, even when that room full of strangers can't be seen. And when you're in a studio, that's basically what you're doing. You're presenting to a group of strangers who may or may not be able to interact with you. And you want to be able to be concise, be interesting, and at the same time warm and friendly. So, one of the first things that we talk about when we go through voice on radio is how you prepare your mind. Now, does anybody here not have an imagination? Jeez. The guy that made Max doesn't have imagination?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's like it got the job done. That's all that matters. All right. when you're in a studio, you don't have any visual feedback for your brain to work with. It does something that is crippling, but at the same time, you can use that crippling fear of what you're about to say. Self-editing is very important when you're on a microphone, but the first thing is you got to be able to talk into it. So I'm going to give this to Sean. Sean, show everybody how you use a mic.
How to use a mic?
Yeah. This is basic class.
Depending on the mic.
Yeah.
You don't talk into it this way, this particular mic. The sound goes in either this side or this side, depending on the microphone.
It's got a little logo on the side that you,
Yeah.
diaphragm
So
stuff.
this one, you would talk into this side.
Mhm. Now, where do you put it?
This one, like
Mhm.
how far from your mouth? I would talk about this close.
Okay.
Depending on what syllables and consonants and sounds you're using. I'm not sure where you're going with this, but
That's okay. You're almost right. All right. What he's talking about is it's
I know how I do it, but I wasn't ever taught how to do it. I
okay.
talk off to the side usually.
I was always taught a hand.
Fist. If you can put your fist between your mouth and the microphone, you've got a good distance. However, and this is Sable's thing, I can't stand the sound of my own voice, because when your voice is amplified back to you, your mouth makes noises. And these noises become distractions, especially on heavy sounds like T's, P's, weaker sounds like V's and D's. It can create kind of a little zzz if you don't pronounce it right. But also that the mic exaggerates everything that you do. So when you go to set up a microphone for the first time, this is a little technique I learned, your hard pops, P's, T's, and things like that, you don't want to send them into the microphone. So instead of having the mic here, fist length difference, most broadcasters talk past their mic. So if I create a pop with my P, it doesn't hear the sound. It hears the P. But if I were to do it like this, I'm actually creating a little shock wave of air that hits the little cardioid in here and makes it shock real quick. So when you go to set up the microphone for the first time, you bring the mic in. Now ours is of course on an arm, but you bring the mic in, and then as soon as you have the set level, you pull it off to the side. Something else that you would probably need to know as far as mic basics is depth. Just like when you have a depth of field on a camera, you have a depth of field with a microphone. One thing I cannot stand, and this is something that'll drive people that do voiceovers crazy as well, is called eating the mic. It's when you go beyond this level, you're right into the mic. Now, if you're doing a slow, whispery type of delivery, that's great. But let's say that, getting back to inflection, that you have something that you want to bring everybody down to let's concentrate on this. So your voice comes down, your tone comes down, you slow down the timing. But then you want to get excited. If you keep the mic in the same spot with no fluctuation whatsoever, what's going to happen is some of that sound is going to be, you're not really going to hear it. But then when you get really loud, it's going to overmodulate and it's going to sound like holy hell of crackles. So body language in a studio is the softer you talk, the more you go past your boundary. You're talking softer, you lean in, you make the point. It's just like in storytellers. Remember being around campfires and people tell stories, and when it gets to the big, let's get to the mystery part, they come in and they slow their voice down and gets real low. Same principle is true with a microphone. But then when you want to talk about big things and, the monster was huge and it had 18 eyes and it looked just like your mother, you're going to pull back away from the mic, creating in your headphones an almost consistent audio level. And you do that just by manipulating how close and how far away from the microphone you are.